Thank you for browsing page 121. Today we're going to take a look at the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Fantasy Adventure module, Dungeon Master's Adventure Log. And you're going to say, wait a minute, you did this one. Yes, I actually did. About 3 years ago, I took a look at this, but I had a worse camera then, I had worse sound then, and frankly, I think I've gotten better as a presenter. So I thought, what the heck? I wanted to take a deeper look at this guy anyway. That last video was fairly short. I just want to kind of relax and expand this a little bit. This guy was out in 83. I don't know if there was an earlier version of this or not. This is the only one I've ever owned, the Dungeon Master's Adventure Log. And the idea is you have everything you need in here to be a Dungeon Master. Now, by 83, I had already been a DM for about 3 years. So I was pretty skilled as far as that went. But still, I thought, well, I can use this. This will be great. And actually, it was very useful. How to use this product. It gives you little how-tos with this. Number your characters, and that way you can tell where the characters are. If you're not using figures especially, you can tell, by the way, lead figures, you can tell where the characters are on the board. By this point, we were playing with lead figures, not always painted, but we did represent everything. Even if we just drew the dungeon on a piece of paper, we put the figures on the piece of paper to represent where they were. So we didn't use a ton of giving character numbers. Class and level abbreviations, C for cleric, D for druid, and so on. MU for magic user. Refers to the current level of the character. You just put down the number next to it. Race and gender. Combat adjustments. This is actually pretty handy so that you as the DM are aware, and especially my thought was between games, I've never really been one to keep a record of the other players, the people in my campaign, what their hit and damage is. So I thought that'd be really handy to write down. Generally, I just kind of keep it in my head. Armor class and type, and you can give the abbreviation for shield, leather, studded leather. Marching orders, I've already talked about. Monster number. The number, I do number my encounters, but I don't do my encounters in order anymore unless it's important to the game. So what I'll do to prep for a game is if I have 3 hours of game to clear up, and I know there's not going to be a lot of role playing as far as in its city, interacting with NPCs and things like that. It's going to be mostly dungeon crawl. I will usually do 2 encounters per hour. So for a 3-hour game, that's 6. And I usually do a 7th encounter just in case the encounters go a little faster than I had planned. And then I'll just pull them out in whatever order I want based on how the party's doing. If they're weaker, I'll throw a weaker combat at them. If they, had some particularly bad luck or they just finished a really tough encounter, I'll throw maybe a weaker one now, or maybe I'll throw another tough one at them to kind of really work them over. It really depends on what's going on in the situation. I used to write my stuff in order and keep it in order, but I stopped doing that when I realized that I could be much more versatile if I just wrote my notes and then move things around. Let's see. Lighting. Who's carrying the light? That is actually important. That can be something that gets a little contentious now and again. But all my players in my current group are honest. And if they have a light, they'll be the ones saying they have the light. And if they don't have a light, and I've mentioned it, and they try to do something where they need light, I'm going to say, hey, wait a minute, you've been using elves with infravision. The whole group is demi-humans. You can all see an infravision, but now you need detail. You need light. I need someone to pull out a light. Unusual events. Treasure number. Again, I will put treasure in my dungeon, but again, I'm going to base it on the encounter rather than put the treasure with this monster or with that monster. I just stay very flexible when I DM. Treasure type. I don't really use treasure types, never really did. To hit modifiers, and these are all the various to hit modifiers that appear throughout the game. This was actually really handy to have because it was all in one place. So until I kind of memorized all this, it was nice to have this at hand. Hit point modifiers, so Tensor's transformation, rage, moderate intoxication, greater intoxication. Interesting that they don't have the potions of heroism and superheroism, which give you temporary hit points. Progression on the combat tables. This is an early look at Thaco, to hit armor class 0. Combat tables could be amended to read like this, and then you go through that. I was never a Thaco user. I've always used my DM screens. Damage modifiers, so for blast, chant, prayer, etc., thief, assassin, backstab, ranger versus giant class, monks with a weapon. Armor class modifiers. Otto's Irresistible Dance takes your armor class down by 4. Tensor's Transformation takes your armor class down by 4. Flank attack, rear attack, magical attacks, no dex bonus. And then missile fire and how cover works. That I still use that. Cover I usually will wing, but it's still nice to have that as a handy reference. Typical inhabitants of a town. Nice quick way to take a short look at it. Surprise and how that modifies things. Avoiding encounters if you want to, and we'll usually just role play that if they want to avoid an encounter for whatever reason. Encounter reactions, again, I'll usually role play that. Sometimes I'll throw dice, but not very often. Encounter distance, detection of the invisible table. We actually threw this table out. I saw no reason why a creature at 7+ hit dice with a high intelligence had a 5% chance of seeing you while you're invisible. I understand that they note the things that you're disturbing around you and maybe a shimmer surrounding you, etc., etc. We threw the invisibility table out. Listening at doors, I always like that. Experience points value of monsters, still use that. Magical aging causes. In here they have alter reality, gate, limited wish, restoration, resurrection, wish, speed potion, and under a haste spell, but they don't have ghost aging. I thought that was a little bit of an omission. I think it's hysterical that a wish spell to nerf the players ages you 3 years, but a gate spell ages you 5. I mean, who's going to cast a gate spell if it's going to age you 5 years? Hiring non-player characters to cast spells or use devices. This was really handy. I know this is a Dungeon Master's guide, but it's right here on page 3. And then we get to the logs themselves. And this is actually a log I have preserved since January 22nd of 92. Yes, in 92, I decided I was starting a medium-level campaign. These were characters that hadn't interacted before, but had come from different sources. So I thought, the heck with it. I'll go ahead and I'll write this one down and I'll log it. I'm going to log it throughout this whole thing. So first we have Jeff, this guy used to play with us. Sarkin. He's lawful, good, fighter, magic user. Mike, who is not Mike that paints my stuff, but Mike was a player, a different Mike that played with us back then, who had a thief named Pockets. I loved Pockets, a halfling thief. Craig is still the same Craig. Sir Karates, 6th level paladin. We have an NPC, Granite, a dwarf with a dwarven thrower. John, I don't remember John. He played Greenleaf the Ranger. I do not remember who John was. I'm thinking it was a friend of this Mike's, but I don't remember John. Then we had an NPC named Thistle, who was a 9th level druid, and an NPC named Crossbrook, who was a 7th level cleric. So we only had 4 players in this one, Jeff, Mike, Craig, and John. And of them, the only one I still see is Craig. And this was the campaign, and this was all the stats I had written down for them and everything. And, you know, the marching order and all that stuff, and I've got what room they slept in this game. And I think this campaign didn't stay together real long because there's nothing else. Now, I had other stuff on these pages. I don't know how well it'll show up in the camera, but this has clearly been erased. And I regret that I did that because I would have liked to have kept whatever I had written there. And there's erasures on this page as well. So I did use this for a little while, not for that campaign in 92. This would have been in the 80s, and I wish I'd kept this stuff. I erased all the stuff from here too. Yeah, all the stuff from here. I use this quite a bit. Still going through erased stuff. I remember doing this one afternoon. I just decided I wasn't going to keep any of this stuff, and I erased it all. I really, really wish I hadn't. This would have been back in the 80s that I did it. But then now we're done with the erasures, so I did about 10 pages worth. This I loved. Armor, the internal layer is shown. I live about a 20-minute to half-hour drive from the Art Institute of Chicago. The Art Institute of Chicago, beyond having beautiful masterwork paintings and such, has an outstanding section on arms and armor from the Middle Ages and other periods. And I've been down there a number of times. I've been there before I ever played D&D, but I've been there since then, and it's nice to go see the armor and to see how big the people were that were wearing the armor and that kind of stuff. It's really fascinating. If you ever get a chance to go to the Art Institute and see that section, I recommend it. But here we get a nice look at all the armor with the internal parts. So banded, chain, leather, padded, plate mail, ring, scale, splinted, studded, and showing the underneath, the gambeson and such like that underneath it. And then we get the helmets, a great helm, regular helmets, another great helm, horse armor, barding plate, barding chain, barding leather. I remember going to the library looking for books on armor. Not easy to find in the 80s, even into the early 90s. Weapons, a bardiche, a bec de corbin, a guisarme, the bow. I know how to use a bow. I learned that when I was training in karate. I learned how to use a bow. Darts, not to be confused with jarts. Fauchard, just all kinds of different things. The glaive, guisarme. And if you watch Forged in Fire, you learn a lot of this too. And then we continue on with the weapons. Very, very handy section. I remember just sitting with that a lot. And then at Arcana in 85, they put a nice section for arms and armor too. And then continuing on some more pages. None of these guys were erased. I didn't get this far in my book. I think I did this at the club I used to belong to back in the 80s. I think I used this, and I think that's what I erased. Because honestly, I wouldn't remember most of the people that played with us at the club. It was so long ago. Okay. Continuing on, still more of these charts. When I bought this, I thought, oh, this is fantastic. I'll use this thing, and it'll take care of all my dungeon needs, not realizing, of course, that I'd fill this guy up within a year, which is another reason I probably stopped using it in the 80s and then erased everything, and then started up in the 90s and never went back to it. Maybe next time I start a brand new campaign, I'll track it in here. I'll have to see. And then we get some more charts from the Dungeon Master's Guide, Becoming Lost, Chance of Encounters, Encounter Distance, Movement Afloat, Oared or Sculled in miles per day, Movement Afoot, miles per day, and then Evade Pursuit Outdoors, how to get rid of people who are tracking you. And then we get a nice sample. And here we have some famous names: Dave Cook, Helen Cook, Kevin Hendricks, Jeff Leeson, Steve Marsh, Jolyn Moldvay, Rebecca Moldvay, Tom Moldvay, Lawrence Schick, Gene Wells. Those are some of those folks are very notable from D&D over the years. And a nice layout, and I have to admit, I grabbed a few of these guys and used them as NPCs in various games. So then we look at the back cover, which shows us the sample sheets and all the other fine products you can buy from TSR as of the publication of this in 1983. So there you have it, a little bit better look, I think, at the Dungeon Master Adventure Log. I know I did this a few years ago, but I really feel I've done a better job of it this time. Feel free to watch the old one. So that's it for today on page 121. I just want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed looking at the Dungeon Master's Adventure Log. I think this guy's available on Drive-Thru-RPG. I'll see if I can find a link to it. And that's all I've got today. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.